Alrighty, let me just check the stream. Let's see when it starts. Uh-oh. Okay, that one's working. YouTube is working. LinkedIn is working. Yay! We're live in 2 places once again. Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel Montori. I'm the head of coaching with Agave Health. Today, I have our Coach Kristina with us here today to discuss the back-to-school rigmarole that ADHD parents deal with and how to make that process smoother.
Yes.
Kristina and I are both parents, and I was joking with Kristina, you know, I need this live as much as probably anyone else.
Me too. Me too.
Kristina, feel free to introduce yourself, your background, whatever you feel relevant to the conversation.
Yeah. So I'm Kristina Proctor. I'm an ADHD coach with Agave Health. I've also coached a little over 3 years full time now, and 4 to 5 before that. And the biggest thing of what I do, the biggest thing that I struggle with that I wanted to share when it comes to back to school is my time management skills. You've got car line pickup, new schedules, new routines, and the time management shifts so much over the summer for us that I get into a groove finally, and I feel like it's stripped away from me. So time management is my biggest challenge.
You know, and I think I think it's the same for me as well in that regard. Just like I've got my work calendar, I've got the school calendar, I've got the after school calendar.
Yeah.
Extracurriculars, all that. And
it's a lot to manage.
It's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's dive in. You know, we already kind of broached the subject here, but why do you think that shift from summer to school routines is so challenging for parents like us with ADHD?
The shift from summer activities to school schedule for parents with ADHD is hard for a myriad of reasons, but the number one thing is that it's an executive functioning workout. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. And so your brain goes from one time management focus, one task management and planning and organizing. All of those are executive functions, and we have to pivot all of them to a different app, to different scheduling tools, and it is a strain. And so on our working memory, on our resources, and so we are getting so much overload into our executive functioning skills, which happens in the prefrontal cortex of our brain. And that's actually also the part of our brain that shuts down first when we get overwhelmed. So that is a biggest part of the challenge, and emotional regulations in there too. And so when you layer that in with everything else, with being a parent, it can feel really insurmountable. So the extra workload can really elevate your ADHD symptoms that you experience day to day. And with proper planning, which that's a part of it, you can figure out how to support yourself as a parent with ADHD.
Man, I haven't looked at it that way before. That it's like you're starting a brand new workout routine with no preparation.
That's right.
And trying to go 0 to 60.
Correct.
It sure feels that way, and that metaphor is very apt, I would say.
Yeah. And I would say too, you're not alone if you're feeling frazzled. Like, this is common with ADHD, without ADHD, but especially with feeling frazzled on your way to work or back home after you drop the kids off is a very common feeling. It's not a personal failure. It's your brain working overtime.
And yeah, we're 2 weeks in, and definitely feeling it. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully we can help out some folks that I know some kids go back to school late, early September. So we've got some folks that we can give them some foundational support. ahead of time. But I'm sure that, if you're in the same boat as Kristina and I, and our kids are already back into school, it's still gonna help you to sort of course correct.
Mm-hmm.
And on that note, what role does structure and flexibility play in this time of year, in this transition? And how do you find the balance that you need?
Yeah, so structure is definitely one of those words that ADHDers sometimes we feel allergic to because we like to have novel, we like new, like it's one of those four things that activates an ADHD brain. It also can feel very restrictive, structure can. And if we implement very rigid plans and they deviate, that can also feel like a moral failure. And so when we think about creating structure, we want to give ourselves a model that achieves the goal we're looking for, like getting breakfast out on the table every morning, while also having some flexibility of what that can look like day to day. So an example of that could be, we use this model a lot in coaching, which is the good, better, best model. What is like the best version of getting breakfast on the table? Maybe that's eggs, whole wheat toast, and like a warm meal. What's a better version, like one tier down? It could look like whole grain cereal in bowls, ready to go. And good enough could be a power bar in your pocket running out the door. Everybody still has full tummies before they go to school or in the car on the way to school, but figuring out what your goal is of getting out the door in the morning and looking at what the good, better, best mode could look like. And this is a question that I have to ask myself and readjust my expectations in different times of year, because I've got a middle schooler now. The good, better, best model looks very different from somebody who has a child in second grade.
Oh, for sure.
And so having the kids standing at the doorway, dressing themselves with mishmash socks, they've got socks on. This is good. This is good enough. So figuring out where you can flex and what your baseline, like minimum viable product is there is really the goal.
And I love the idea of having a plan B ready to go. And it's like, okay, kids were slow waking up this morning.
Yeah.
It was hard getting everyone out the door.
Right.
Having a box of power bars in the pantry is going to be your saving grace.
Yeah.
And the permission that comes with that like, it's okay to have a rough morning, and that plan B is there for a reason.
Yes.
And you're still a great parent.
Yeah. They've got some food, they've got some protein. And so really laying out that structure of what that gives you enough structure to the baseline of having breakfast without having too rigid of a schedule. If you sleep through your alarm, you're still able to get that one baseline done.
That is very, gives me a sense of relief almost.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Thankfully my son, he's old enough that he can prep his own breakfast, but it's, I don't have to feel so bad when it's like, all right, well, you had like frozen waffles. Sometimes he doesn't even toast them. He just eats them frozen because he likes it that way. But you're not going to school hungry, and you made it to the bus on time.
Yes.
So,
yes. Absolutely.
No, I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Speaking of breakfast and mornings, what are some ways that ADHD parents can help make their mornings run more smoothly?
So you're not going to like my answer. I prescribe to the notion that the best mornings are prepared the night before.
Oh, for sure.
And so that's really where my focus lies when we're trying to establish morning routines. We look at night. If you're getting to bed at 1:00 in the morning and you're trying to get up at 5 a.m., there's a little bit of a challenge there. So we look at the evening. So if you're trying to make mornings run more smoothly as a parent with ADHD, what I do recommend is identifying one small thing, like putting socks inside shoes next to the door. Like one small thing the night before that can help keep momentum moving in the morning. So figuring out where are your, I call them friction points, that as you move through the morning. For me, it's picking my clothes. For a long time, I had a hard, like it was too much. So I started putting my clothes out the night before. And it really helped me just keep that momentum. After I've washed my face and gotten ready, I can just move into changing and then getting into the kitchen to do the next phase of the morning. So figuring out where you are challenged in the morning and what can you do the night before to help alleviate that friction as much as possible.
And I'm sure that that counts for the kids as well. Like, what are their friction points maybe that they're not super aware of?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, kids is we've been kids, but also kids have different growth phases. Your friction point that you have with a 13-year-old might be different than 14. And so that's a part of the flexibility too. What is the baseline that I need to meet? They need to be dressed. They need to have their jacket. They don't have to have it on, which is a battle I stop battling. They need to be holding it at least and moving on into the car. So understanding that some of those friction points might change over time.
Definitely.
And reassessing what that looks like.
You know, I didn't even realize we were kind of following this already, because that mad dash in the morning of, do you have your instrument for strings? Do you have your homework folder?
Yes.
Do you have your lunchbox? All that. Mm-hmm. And we tend to just pile it onto the kitchen table because that is like the last point before heading out.
That's drop zone.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's exactly it. And, you know, there still is mornings where, why isn't it where it belongs? But that's not important right now. It's where is it?
Yes, exactly. I love that for two reasons. One is another way to make mornings and afternoons run a little bit more smoothly is having a drop zone. It's basically a home where things belong, which gives that us as ADHD parents that structure to know where to go to find the thing. It takes a minute you know, on average 66 days to form a habit. That's important to know too. And 43% of our waking behaviors are habitual as a whole. So if you already have a drop zone, just keep it and figure out if there's things that you need to do to reduce friction with it. The other tip that I would say that was majorly helpful for us in my family was creating visual checklists. So in the morning, and you could do this as an adult, you could have it for your kids who are younger with pictures, and saying like, okay, before we go out the door, these are the 4 things you need to have. Do you have your shoes on? Do you have your backpack? Do you have your homework folder? And go through those things. And so that way it also relieves it from you after a while, having to carry that mental load on yourself to check with everybody else on what they have in the moment.
Well, and I'm sure there are a lot of parents out there, like myself, who typically there's one parent in the household that's in charge of getting the child out the door to school.
Yeah.
You know, if you're lucky, you might be able to tag team it a bit. But I know a lot of parents are in that boat. And it's funny you mentioned the checklists. We have a laminator. So I did dry erase. I printed a sheet, I laminated it. I took a marker and Velcroed it to the sheet, hung the sheet up. Yeah. And my son was using that for a while to check off his morning routine. And then it got to a point where he didn't need to check it anymore. He just needed to glance at it. And eventually we leave it up, but we probably don't need to anymore. But it was super helpful for me, especially because I have to take care of myself, the pets, and the kiddo, because half the time my husband's, you know, out of town, whatnot. So, and for single parents out there, gosh. So anything we can do to reduce that mental load.
Well, even if you don't need it right now, sometimes when we need a reset, using a tool like that and already having it available, maybe y'all were really sick for a week. Yeah. Maybe you're coming back from spring break. Maybe you're going back into another type of routine. That can be a key tool to be like, this is how I reset. And that way it's not having to go through that mental strain. And so that's a resource and a simple tool to grab again.
You had already started talking about after school a little bit. Let's ease into that chaotic after school window that happens between like school pickup or whenever the bus drops off and dinner time, bedtime, those transitional periods.
So transition after school is one of the biggest things that clients that I work with ask about. Mostly because I work with all adult ADHDers. And so the number one question is, how can I support my kids' regulation after school, regardless of age? The number one thing I ask is, how are you regulating yourself right now? That is not on the top of their priority list. Your kids, if you are not regulated and if you're overwhelmed and you're putting that back out in where your kids are going to absorb that, it's going to continue to dysregulate them. So I would first ask that, how are you regulating? And one of the ways that we can do that is by identifying, what does transition time look like when we get home? So one of the things that we do at home, I've got one kid, they're in middle school. We've done this for the past couple of years, is each one of us has a snack box in the pantry. There's not a lot in it, but you get to pick your after school snack, you get a drink, and you get 30 to 45 minutes of downtime before we get into like our family activities in the evening. So you go in your room, you let out the dog, you get a snack. We've got a routine. And so that's the structure that we follow. So giving yourself permission to have those landing spots, putting stuff down, having places for your forms, and then moving into a transition, essentially ritual, you and your kiddo, so that they can have some quiet time and space to regulate before you get into family activities or dinner. And so that way you have the time as well.
So follow-up question to that, asking for a friend. What if there isn't really a time for that there's hardly any downtime built in? Like only on baseball days, thankfully it's not every day of the week, but my kiddo gets off the bus at 4:30 and then you have to be at baseball at 6. He also has homework and you need to eat. And I'm kind of like, it's boom, boom, boom. And I just feel for him because, this all just started. So far, he's doing okay.
Right.
But yeah, any advice when there isn't that time?
So I would ask a couple of things. One is, what is your minimal viable routine or minimal viable dinner that happens before we go to baseball? What are also some options to help with giving them a little bit, like 5-10 minutes, just to bring that calm down?
Yeah.
So if you already have, like, baseball's not every day.
Thankfully, it's only 2 days a week.
Okay. So if you don't currently have some type of transitional ritual, I would focus on that and then figure out what a minimal version of that looks like, knowing that there's going to be days where it doesn't hit.
Yeah.
And so and we all have those days, right? Like we're going to have the days where we show up and the kids have to drop stuff off and you have to hurry and pick up stuff. And that's why it gets into the night before, what can I do to make the afternoon easier? And that might be crock pot. That might be, what is an easy dinner? What are sandwiches? And just giving that space for that transition and lessening that workload.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I think I'm going to, I've got a few hours before I need to figure that out because it is a baseball night. But
it is a baseball night, yeah.
And he needs to eat before too, because you can't practice for 2 hours on just a snack. So yeah, it's tough, but it's definitely a lighter dinner,
because you want them running around with something heavy in their stomach. That doesn't work.
Well, and it's got to be easy because we don't have the time, right? It's got to be sandwiches or something simple. But well, I really appreciate that. My friends I'll let her know.
Yeah, I will say something interesting that somebody I saw online try, and that works really well for them, so I'll pass that on to other people, is that they focused on giving their kids a bigger meal instead of a snack after school. And so then the kids, instead of a full meal at dinner time, get a little bit more of an evening snack instead. And that helped with regulation, because they were, some of them eat lunch at like 10:45, 11 o'clock in the morning. And so here it is, 4 o'clock, they're hungry. So also knowing when your kid needs to eat, because that's, and us too, as ADHDers, I'm one of the ADHDers that forgets to eat. So having accessible foods is really important for me, just as a parent.
That's my son too. We on Tuesday we ended up, he had a Lunchable while he was doing his homework. I felt so bad, but like he had a full enough tummy going into baseball. And then when we got home, I'm like, okay, you need another snack, because like that was pretty grab and go pretty quick. And you just burned a ton of calories. So we followed it up with fruit, veg, and some yogurt, because he just wants dessert, right? I'm like, no, you need to eat more. And I'm kind of like, all right, what can we do so that we don't do this every day? We're learning. We're learning this new routine. Another question for my friend.
Yeah, bring it.
So there's so much paperwork, and some of it's even digital. Sign-up forms, permission slips, and just other logistical nightmares. Any advice, any strategies for managing all of that additional mental load with various due dates?
Yeah, it's wild. The things that come through, and it's not the teacher's fault, it's not the administrator's fault. It just is the nature of being a parent with a kid in school. That's it. The number one thing I will say to parents with ADHD when it comes to the mental load of paperwork, either virtual or digital, is don't rely on your memory. We have a tendency to think that we should remember all the things that need to get done. And sometimes we can. But we end up holding ourselves up to this level, and we're scanning through our brain constantly, which really strains our executive functioning, which we talked about in the beginning. When we strain our executive functioning, overwhelm sets in, and executive functioning are the things that start to break down first. And we need that. So what I recommend is externalizing, either with calendars, inserting into a calendar, writing down and having some type of activity where it's like you review it once a week or twice a week. There's all sorts of different ways to do that. I will be, a flyer went home on the night where we picked up my kiddo's schedule before they started school. There was a meeting that I missed that was on the flyer that I missed on Tuesday of this week. And my kid brought home the documentation that I was supposed to pick up at the meeting because I missed it. And they said, "Didn't you get the flyer?" And I said, "I absolutely did. And I still missed it." And so the other part of this is giving yourself some grace, because stuff is going to get forgotten. So you can have some structure and having a capture spot, or in your landing spot in your house, having a place for folders and papers, and giving yourself some grace in that, and knowing that stuff is going to get missed. Regardless of ADHD, stuff is going to get missed. So I would say start there by getting it out of your brain and externalizing it, and having a way to refer back to it 2 or 3 times a week.
That's one area where I'm grateful with the school stuff. Typically, it all comes home on Wednesdays. They do the Wednesday folder. They deal about it at my son's school. And so it's typically 1 day a week. The due dates for when things need to be returned, that does vary. But at least I know that if something's coming home,
it'll be in that day.
It'll be on Wednesday, unless it's super important. And our school does a great job of making sure the kids know to, like, hey.
Yeah.
When he was younger, they would staple it to their backpack.
Smart.
Right. I didn't like getting the staple out, but I mean, grand scheme of things, those backpacks don't last long anyway. Yeah. But I hope everyone lucky enough to have schools like that help. And like with our PTA, we don't all have ADHD, but we all miss things. We're all human.
Right. Exactly.
We're all doing this on a volunteer basis as well. So it's helpful when the community you're within gives you that grace as well.
Yes.
But it's also a great reminder to give yourself that space and grace as well, so
Absolutely.
that you're not adding any mental, moral failure to it all.
Yeah, it's true.
So we've got, I'm sure there's someone who's going to watch this at some point thinking like, okay, school has already started and I'm already feeling like I'm behind. And what are signs that a routine's not working, and what can you do to adjust without necessarily scrapping everything?
Yeah, that's the ADHD dilemma, right? We often say like, it didn't work today, therefore it's not working at all. And I always remind people, it's like, let's not throw it completely out. We want to make sure that we're identifying what is working and what is not working. It may not be the entire routine is not working. It may be that the timing isn't enough, because time management and time blindness are part of our executive dysfunction that we experience. So figuring out specifically what is not working and like doing a serious review on it is the first step I would do. Because what happens is that you're going to feel like you're firefighting, right? You're drained, you're resentful, you end up avoiding it altogether. And we don't want to throw it out. We want to change one small piece, maybe moving bedtime 5 minutes earlier or getting up 5 minutes before you are now. We're going to focus on putting our backpacks by the door instead of having them in the bedrooms, thinking about one tiny step to move us in the direction that we want to go. And when curveballs happen, which they will, understanding that this is a grace opportunity. One way that I extend grace to myself as a parent is having spare snacks in the car. Sometimes during the beginning of the school year, protein bars, and they just stay in the car. They're car bars is what I refer to them as. And then I also sometimes keep a, $5-10 worth of cash in the car, because there's so many times where drop off happens and they're like, oh yeah, we have this today and I need $5. And I'm like, cool. I saw the paper come in last week and I forgot to give it to you. So it's like thinking about, are there things that I usually fall behind on? And are there some grace items that I can give myself? For me, there are car bars and a little bit of cash in the car to support that.
That's really smart, because I mean, who keeps cash on them? And it's always the night before.
It always is at 9:45 when everything. Yep. That's exactly right. So we're not focusing on perfectionism, and we're also not only figuring out every single way that everything can go wrong. We're thinking about some key ways that you commonly struggle so that you can have some supports and structure to continue on.
Let's continue on that vein and talk about ways to recover from a rough morning or a rough week without spiraling into that self-criticism.
That's such a big question. So often when we have that self-criticism as a parent, we start to spiral. And I think it's important for us to remind ourselves as parents and as humans that one bad morning does not negate 20 great ones or good ones or decent ones. Our brains often go to everything that has not worked all the time versus thinking about all the things that have. So a way to negate or lessen the spiral is I like to reach for, what are the wins that worked this morning? If the answer is nothing, fine. Look at the day before. What worked yesterday that maybe either didn't work today or that I forgot to do? And so reaching for those wins and learnings first. And gratitude is always a great practice to do too. They've done lots of studies and research on this, focusing on identifying wins and expressing gratitude, even silently to yourself to regulate, can start rewiring processes in the brain. So I would say those are the easiest, simplest tools that you can do in car line, in the parking lot before you walk into work, on the way to walking to your desk at home, what have you. So that's honestly where I would start.
Well, and I love that idea too of taking a few moments for like micro regulation.
Yes.
So that you're not jumping from one thing to the next. Because
Yeah.
how could you recover if you don't stop?
To recognize that you're not okay.
Yeah.
And that's the key right there, right? Is having that awareness. I think what I see as an ADHD coach, especially working with parents, is, working or stay at home, is that they're so used to living in the chaos, and they sometimes wear that as a badge, like this is how I should be feeling all the time. And that's not true. It's exhausting, and it's a hamster wheel we have to get off of. And so giving yourself permission to say, how am I in this moment? What do I need? And then you can get into reflection if that's what you need in that moment. As a parent of a middle schooler, some things just we can't control. And so I try to focus on things that I can influence and control.
Well, we haven't even really thought about that, on top of just all of the stress of the time of year, dealing with, kiddos going through developmental transitions and what that does to their regulation and how they express things to you. There's an added bonus little fun thing you get to deal with.
Yeah. And I think that's an important point. Is one of the best things we can do as a parent with ADHD is learn to regulate ourselves and know that we're going to have days where we don't hit it on point. And that's when we apologize, recognize it, and figure out ways moving forward that we can do better, because we're not shooting for perfection. We're shooting for progress. And a part of that is stopping to recognize that we are dysregulated and asking ourselves, what do I need in this moment? And we don't ask ourselves that enough. And so the simple thing to do too is, and I say this a lot in coaching, Rachel, have you heard of HALT?
Ooh, yes. I know H is for hungry, right?
Yes. And so HALT or HALTs with an S at the end, we use this a lot. So when you're dysregulated and needing a reset, asking yourself HALTs. Am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Am I tired? And the S we add on, especially for our ADHDers, is am I needing some sort of sensory need? For me, when I'm overstimulated, I have to put clothes on that are very, way, way more comfortable. And it's usually a big baggy t-shirt and some sweatpants. And so if I'm in sensory overwhelm, or if I'm in overwhelm in general, it's usually a sensory challenge for me. And so giving yourself a minute to say, HALT. What am I needing right now? Am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, or sensory seeking right now?
And I haven't really thought about how your sensory input is like just another brick on the wall that you gotta deal with. And you're right, it can sometimes be one of the most overwhelming pieces, because it's just like a gnat that keeps buzzing in your ear that you can't swipe away. It's not going anywhere until you get the fly swatter and do something about it.
Well, and that goes back to, for your reset, if you are sensory seeking and needing sensory input, that is something you can typically control. And so if you are, I'm a sensory seeker when it comes to clothing and, chewing something crunchy, that's something that would get me in trouble with eating too many chips or something. And now I have carrot sticks. It's something that I can grab. I don't have any guilt in eating. And so that's a part of sometimes my reset is changing my clothes. This is what works for me, changing my clothes and getting a snack. It's usually that I'm hungry.
Well, I mean, that it is first, so it makes sense.
Yeah, fair.
First in the hall.
Fair.
To close us out, if you could give ADHD parents just one permission slip right now, what would it say?
If I could give ADHD parents one permission slip right now, what would it say? You have permission to choose good enough and let that be your win for the day.
Oh, I love that. I need to put that on a sticky note on my computer and just leave that up.
And I choose that one specifically because we with ADHD have a tendency to put the bar way up here. There's nothing wrong with a high bar. The sustainability of it every single day is what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
And so that's not a sustainable benchmark every single day. And so understanding that good enough sometimes looks right here.
Well, Kristina, thank you so much for the wonderful advice that I'm going to pass on to my friend.
Yes.
And to everyone either watching the live with us now or the replay, thank you so much. I hope this was helpful for you. I did want to say that if you found anything that Kristina said impactful today, you can work with her as a coach at Agave Health. We've got a QR code up here so that you can download the app if you're ready to take that leap and get some support with adult ADHD. We also offer ADHD-informed therapy and ADHD evaluations. So consider us your one-stop shop for all things ADHD. And if you're not quite ready to start coaching just yet, feel free to check out our blog. That's going to be agavehealth.com/blog. There's a lot of great articles on there related to parenting with ADHD, as well as ADHD symptoms and symptom management, and how ADHD shows up in the workplace. So it's a great resource there, and it's completely free. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Rachel.